Hey there, Storm.
Hey, Chanel.
Hey, I'd like to introduce Storm as a relationship coach and tarot teacher for the last 12 years. Storm Arcana has mentored thousands of clients with his multiple award-winning heroic tarot business, guiding their transitions from heartache to heart connection. As a sacred storyteller with expertise in writing, art, and theater, he provides coaching programs that assist his clients in reframing and rewriting the stories of their lives so they can attract relationships that nourish and support them. Storm also teaches tarot, numerology, astrology, and the Kabbalah, or is it, Kabbalah, through one-on-one Arcana Academy tutoring sessions, classes, and workshops. So, welcome, Storm. Can you
Thank
tell us a little about what got you into relationship coaching and why you're so dedicated to helping people find love?
Sure. And thanks for having me. It's so nice to have this conversation, this platform. I kind of believe that everything boils down to relationships, but I would say that about, a few years, about over a decade ago, I was working as primarily just a tarot reader, and I was reading cards for people, and that kind of snuck up on me as a career or life choice. It wasn't something that I went to school for. I went to school for a lot of different other things, and um, after a while, I realized that all of my tarot readings basically consisted around, either money or relationships or love. And I just delved a lot deeper into that. Even with money, it was their relationship with money, their relationship with their mom, their relationship with their business. And that's when I started veering more into relationship coaching in general. And it's really a passion of mine because I tend to attract entrepreneurs, single entrepreneurs who are working on their businesses or their careers to the exclusion of everything else. And I did that. I went to school for a long time, and I focused on my business to the exclusion of my own relationships. And I didn't make time, for love and relationships. And I felt like all my relationships lacked trust and support. And I felt like, oh, if I don't do it myself, then it's not going to get done right. And it was a painful time because I was consumed with inadequacy, insecurity. It was lonely. Like I'd cry myself to sleep at night. And then I had a turning point. I had this like breakthrough where there was this higher voice or inside voice that was like, hey, like, you do deserve love. You are worthy of these things, but you're going to have to let go of all this judgment that you have for yourself. All these judgmental feelings that you have around the world are just your judgment around yourself. And you're going to have to focus and dedicate your life on unconditional love and loving yourself just exactly as you are, which is very much like the High Priestess card. For those of you, familiar with the tarot, she's just sitting there in between two pillars, and she's not touching either of the polarities. She just is in the center. And so when I got that download, I was like, okay, this is a choice. I can make this choice. And so for the past 3 years, especially, I've been focusing my life and devoting my life to this concept of loving without conditions, loving myself and loving everyone else around me. And that just led me on this, like, I don't want to call it a crusade, but it kind of feels that way. That kind of, it feels intense to where I want everyone to feel that as well. Because I'm still learning, I'm still growing, and I have relationships that nourish and support me now. And I want that for everybody. And so it's my joy to find people that I can work with who I can be a witness and I can be continual support for them as they do the same kind of work for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really beautiful to hear about the evolution of your personal journey and how it relates to the business you're creating. And I'm curious, what was that like actually to transform internally and devote yourself to unconditional love? What was that path like? What was it like to change certain patterns and ways of being?
That's a really good question. And I think there's a multitude of answers. One of the first one that made me think of it off the top of my head was like, um, it was really about releasing everyone else's thoughts and feelings around me. And like, because a lot of us spend a lot of time like, what does he think about me? Does she like me? Does he like me as much as I like him? And I really had to release those kinds of thoughts and feelings, and only focus on how I thought and felt about them. And that was radical. It's a radical departure. Because I don't think that's how we're taught. I certainly wasn't taught that. What will the neighbors think? Or you can't go out like that because I didn't raise you like that. There's all these constrictions and restrictions that we're raised in, whether it's our culture or our home or our family. And I had to kind of go solo on a lot of that. And at first that was really lonely, but then I also realized I was conflating loneliness with aloneness, and that's also a fallacy. So that's where it started, I think. But then to deepen that answer, I would say it was relying on the creative arts that I did have expertise in to support me. I have my Master of Arts and my Master of Fine Arts in writing, and I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts in painting and a Bachelor of Arts in English. And it was about using my creative writing and my theater and my role play and my drawing and my painting and journaling, and using them as tools to integrate myself. Because I felt like I was splintered, not only in those realms creatively, but as a persona. Like there was Storm the writer, Storm the artist, there was Storm the tarot reader. And I was like, well, how can I find a holistic way to integrate them all and feel more complete rather than spread out everywhere? And when I realized it was just a matter of asking myself, well, okay, you're on this journey now. How do you want to resource yourself? And for me, writing and art were definitely my support staff, right? Until I found other coaches, until I found other people to support me. For a while, it was like steady going solo with those kinds of aspects. So I feel like whether I'm a coach or a reader, it's about storytelling, and it's about telling a different story. So when you read the tarot, you're looking for archetype and symbol and metaphor that you relate to, and then it increases or imbues your story with a deeper meaning. And that's kind of why I mean, it's kind of funny. Tarot's I joke and say tarot's kind of like my first love, but it's true. And stories are my first love, and I have a very difficult time separating them, and I don't think you really should. So, does that make sense? Did I ramble a little?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And it's it's so true that it's the stories we tell about ourselves that end up really creating the lives that we live. And how it's
Definitely.
it's beautiful to see your journey of turning to creativity. And and could you tell us a little more about like how you use tarot exactly, like what it's like as a tool for coaching, and maybe a little about like the symbology and archetypes and how that plays into helping people like rewrite their narratives?
Sure. So I got my first deck when I was 13, and I got it because I had read about it somewhere in some books. And I was a very sick kid. I wasn't very healthy, and so I was bedridden a lot. And the library bookmobile would come to our house, and I'd get lots of books. And I discovered comic books and tarot at the same time. And I still think of them as very similar. They're panels of information that tell a story. And with tarot, you can move those panels around for different meanings. And yes, there's some stuff to learn, but anybody can look at a deck and have some kind of emotional response, because the cards are created to invoke that in all of us. So yeah, some of it is, it feels like, if you don't know the cards, what does it mean? But so many of us are relying on other people to give us meaning, that I think the tarot is a wonderful way to have that solitary awakening to discovering your own meaning about things and what symbols mean. Your reaction to the Empress card may be very different than my reaction to the Empress card. And that tells us a little bit about who we are as individuals and what we've been through. And I use the tarot as a way, as a crossroads tool. Here's where you are right now. Things are as they are. And I ask my clients, I ask myself, what is it that you want based on this? I did come across early in my business about, over a decade ago, people wanting to know the future. And they'd be like, what's going to happen to me? And my response would be like, well, what do you want to happen? You're not a bystander in the crossroads of your life. You have agency. But a lot of us aren't trained to think that way. And so a lot of times tarot is like, well, here's what I see for you. Can you see this for you? And I think that's where the coaching comes in.
Mm-hmm. So you have expertise in many other areas besides tarot. What role do they play in your coaching?
So when I meet with someone, I find out like what they're into, what they like to do. Do they like to write? Do they journal? Are they an avid tarot reader already? Are they pulling cards, or are they not? They never experienced that before. Do they have any art expertise, or is that something that they've always wanted to try but they're scared of? Are there any learning challenges that they have? I'm really good at creating programs that are specifically designed for my clients' needs. So one of my students actually, he didn't want to do any workbooks. He wasn't down with writing. So I knew that our classes would be more acting. We did some acting. We did some drawing. But I never gave him any writing exercises. Then I found out later he was working with an aspect of dyslexia. So once I found that out, he had a lot of shame around that. Once we figured that out, I was like, oh, well, now I can create a different, program for you, knowing that how to support you in that. So for me, it's about understanding which of the creative arts tools that I have in my toolbox can help people expand outside of just up here and what's in here, and how do we connect them, and how does art or writing help us in that. I write a lot of memoir, and a lot of those stories are about trauma that I experienced. And I do think there is some reinvestigating the wound in order to heal the aspects. But I also know that when I don't have support during that investigation, I can go into a really dark place. And so I feel like being a coach in the midst of someone writing a story like that is really helpful. I'm not there to grade their work. I'm not there to judge the content. I'm not there to judge the level of how great it is. That's not it. It's about like, what are they sharing, and how is it changing them, and how is it shifting their perspective about the story that they've been telling that's probably no longer relevant. And tarot, for all of its mystical connotations, to me is pretty straightforward and analytical in a lot of ways too. I mean, I think it is true on one hand that we feel things intuitively before we can talk about them analytically. But I also feel like, a story is laid out there in pictures, and that's very simple, and that's something we can all work on together. And if it's laid out on the table, we can have a conversation around that. So the arts supplement my divination. And by divination, I simply mean going deeper, in our unconscious, and be more aware of the choices and beliefs that we're making every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like an excellent tool for working with the unconscious and bringing more awareness to things that, like, deeper parts of the self. And can you say more about how you would work with that?
Well, I think it boils down to trust. If I can trust myself, and I can trust the feelings and thoughts I'm having to be supporting me at that time, then I can trust myself in dating. I can trust myself in business partnerships. I can trust the kind of people I'm attracting in all aspects of my life. I can trust to find a new way to communicate with my mother. That I think it boils down to that. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
That when I'm awakening my unconscious, I'm bridging my higher self and my lower self. My lower self has to pay rent. My lower self had to figure out Zoom to talk to you. All of those things are practical earthbound things. My higher self, which I used to think was up here a long time ago, I know it's here now. My higher self, my inner being, loves me as I am, always. And so it's having a conversation where my higher self is allowing my lower self to always be okay with where I am, and knowing that that's okay. I mean, there's a Hawaiian prayer that talks about, like, everything is perfect, may it be even more perfect. And that's a great sentiment. And I think it's a truth, a universal truth, but I also think it's something that we have to work at a little bit, and it requires support. And so my work as a coach is listening to my clients' stories, helping them express them in ways maybe they wouldn't, whether it's through writing or journaling or drawing or acting, and then or through the tarot, and then getting them to transform that story, to find a way to reinvigorate aspects that maybe they had lain dormant for a while, or beliefs that they had as a child that they let go of as an adult. That comes up a lot. Yeah, I had another thought, but maybe it'll come back.
Yeah, I'm really curious to hear more about like using creativity and awakening your clients' creativity to awaken their healing potential and their connection with themselves, their trust in themselves. Can you say more about that?
Sure. Like what aspects? Like what would be a good way to steer me? Because I feel like I could go lots of different ways with that.
Yeah, like, so say someone feels like stuck in their life because they don't have that trust in their own creativity to like create what they want. Mm-hmm. And they, maybe they're frustrated with the patterns of relationships they have. And how would you get them in touch with their creativity if they don't feel like they have that connection?
Well, I think the first thing for anybody in that situation, I mean, I've been in that situation too, is to just honor your awareness around it first. We would just honor that. I had a great therapist years ago who was like, if you're aware of something, you're already working on it. And that was really a relief for me to hear at that time, because I think so many of us are told that we have to fix things. And when actually our energy would be better spent putting on the things that are already working and how to support ourselves to build towards those things that we want. So let's say, for example, the client that you're talking about, hypothetically, I know journals. So we would maybe have 5 minutes in our session where they would journal about what they wanted. And then we would look at that and be like, well, where is that already evidenced in your life? And how can we expand that? How can we build on that? I have lots of prompts and creative concepts that I like to just bring on people sometimes. Oh, here's the Knight. Like, for instance, I got my deck beside me. Here's the Knight of Pentacles. Here's the High Priestess. Write a conversation between them. What would they say? And maybe I would choose the cards based on what their reading was, or we would already have had a conversation about what that archetype means to them. And so it might be aspects of their personality. And I think other people might label them as different things, like the inner coach, or the inner saboteur, or they might label them different ways. But by taking away the judgment, by saying, well, this is the High Priestess and she's here to help you, and she's here to help you awaken your intuition, then it becomes a little less about blame or right or wrong or good or bad. And we can find a way to access things that maybe we didn't before, when we were holding on to so much shame, thinking that we should be different or we should be better. I think anyone who comes in to see me is already working on their things, because they have that desire, they have that impetus for self-change, for transformation, for what I call alchemy. It's personal alchemy. And so I consider myself a sacred storyteller, and I am honored and humbled every day with the stories that people share with me in confidentiality about what they're working through. When I do my relationship breakthrough consultations, which are complimentary, when I do them with people, I'm consistently blown away by the stories that they share with me. And so that's why it's sacred. And I think that when we tell a story, it is sacred. And so bringing that aspect of spirituality into what we consider to be mundane aspects of our lives is also part of my work. There's this wizard aspect of me that wants people to access the personal magic. And I think art and writing is magic. To speak a word is magic. It's to speak an intention. It's to speak a vibration. And a lot of times, these conversations about tarot or these practical applications of art are simply ways to get people to tap into that and see that it's something that all of us can do. We can all be psychic. We can all be magic. We can all be perfect as we are. I don't believe anyone's broken. I just don't.
Yeah, thank you. That's beautiful. Do you have any do you have any final like tips or like tools that you would like to share with our listeners?
I tips and tools. I feel like it's nice just to like, whatever it is that people like have for their own meditation, whatever their own meditative quality is. I have a lot of clients who can't sit still, so their jogging is their meditation, or their yoga is their meditation, or that's fine. All of those things are valid. But I wonder, like, when you sit with yourself in that quiet moment, like, are you comfortable? Are you comfortable sitting with just you? And how does that feel? And I think for me, it wasn't comfortable for a very long time. It was like I would lose myself in a crowd, or I would surround myself with people, and I'd still feel alone. I still feel like pretty separate or isolated. And especially like the holidays, can be hella triggering. And we just went through, just went through that. So maybe I want everyone, whether they work with me or with someone else, to find the support that they need. Because for me, it was like, I don't live in a vacuum. There's lots of communities, and oftentimes it doesn't feel like there is anyone that understands what you're going through. And I would just be like, well, what kind of stories am I ingesting? And what kind of shows am I watching? What kind of books am I reading? What kind of video games am I playing? And are they the stories that I want to feed on to change my own story? I think that's a big tip of mine. There's certain things I won't watch because they're not in vibration or alignment with what I want in my life. And so look at how you're feeding yourself first, and then, branch out, ask for assistance. And I say that like it's the easiest thing to do. And it's totally not. It's totally not the easiest thing to do. But if you trust one person, then you can trust another, and that builds up. I do want to say, just so people know, that I do work with people in San Francisco in person, but I do a lot of my coaching sessions remotely. Mm-hmm. And it's just as powerful to have a reading like you and I are talking as it is in person. So I want people to know that too. And what else?
Let's see. You have so much really awesome wisdom to share, and I totally want to pick your brain, and I just don't know what to ask you next. No. Is there anything we haven't covered already? We've covered a little of your personal journey around relationships and what it was like to use tarot and the arts.
Yeah, I know one more thing we haven't talked about is that a lot of people ask me, who do I work with? And they ask me if I work with women, or if I work with gay men, or that kind of thing. And I had a huge conversation about that with someone yesterday. I do not discriminate with my clients based on gender or sexuality, because I tend to attract people who exist within that spectrum. And so I don't think of things as like straight or gay or, there's bisexuals exist, damn it. Transgender people exist. Like, there's all these different aspects to our own relationships. And there's lots of, polyamory is a thing, monogamy is a thing, and you're allowed to have any of those things or any combination of things that you want. And as a relationship coach, I'm well versed in those things, and I'm well versed in supporting people in those spaces. So I love working with my women who are entrepreneurs and are looking for the man that they want of their dreams. I love working with them. I also love working with my polyamorous couples. I like working with people who aren't really interested in monogamy. I like the gay guys that come up to me and are like, well, I do want a husband, and I do want a kid, and I want to have someone who just thinks of me. All those things are valid. And I think that we're so busy labeling each other and saying what is or isn't valid, or what's good or bad, that we're kind of cutting off our nose to spite our face in some instances. And I just want to say, sexuality can be inclusive, gender can be inclusive. And the work that I do is across the board in that way. And I want people to give themselves permission to try different things, outside of what they might have been considered the norm. Because I don't think that, I think we're in a really special time right now where those things don't have to be the box that we live in. Mm-hmm. I think that's important to talk about. So
Yeah, that's really important. And it kind of ties back into something you said earlier, which is around like we're conditioned to be certain ways of growing up, and we're told like how we can show up. And so much of our orientation is toward what others think of us and perceive about us rather than our authentic selves.
yeah, you came here to be you. You didn't come here to be what someone thinks you ought to be.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's really daunting and challenging. And that's what we're all here for as community. We're all connected and we all have more in common with each other than we don't have in common with each other. And that takes some work too, to dig beneath the surface. So yeah, I welcome anyone who wants to work with me on any of those kinds of themes. I do think loving yourself without conditions is the key to more satisfaction and fulfillment in your life. It's definitely a lifelong practice and pursuit of mine now. And I'm excited to have this conversation with you and hopefully many more in the future about these kinds of things as we both grow. And I know it's a passion of yours too. So I already feel supported by you, and that support from you helps me propel further to support others, and the web grows. So I think that's really dynamic and has so much impact. So thanks for having this conversation with me.
Yeah, thank you, Storm. So before we wrap up, do you want to share anything else about your programs and how clients can reach you and learn more about you?
Sure. My website's stormantic.com. It's stormantic.com. And people can schedule a complimentary relationship breakthrough session with me. And that's a phone call that we have in which we talk about your challenges in love and relationships. I give you a couple strategies and then we see whether it's good to work together or not. And they can also schedule a coaching session or they can schedule a reading. They're a little different, but the more I do this, the more they become sort of the same thing. But some people come in for a reading, some people come in for a coaching session, and I want to honor that. And if people are interested in learning tarot, I do, through Arcana Academy, teach one-on-one classes, and I teach students all over the world. And so it's either, a lot of those classes are remote. And I'm choosing to stick one-on-one right now. Perhaps I'll have workshops in the future, but I don't really see that happening at the moment. I really enjoy people who are committed to using tarot as a tool to awaken their unconscious and affect their lives. Tarot can be a great tool of positive psychology, and I'm well versed in that approach. And so yeah, if people are interested in learning more about what we might call mystical traditions and a way to enhance their own spiritual work, I'm here for that too.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, it's been so lovely having you here, and thank you again for sharing your amazing gifts and wisdom with us today. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Chanel. This has been great.